These are our quick take webinars, ladies and gentlemen. So in that spirit, let's get moving. Again, my name is Wayne Newitz here with Lojiwa, and I am very thrilled to introduce our topic for this quick take, put walls and how they are going to help you optimize your picking and your packing operations. And so I would also be very remiss in not introducing our honored guest and speaker. Those who have attended these quick takes before are going to recognize this gentleman. So without further ado, let's get started and let me introduce you all to my friend and colleague, Dr. Jamie Babka. Jamie, how are you today, sir?
I'm great. Thanks, Wayne.
You betcha.
Hi, everybody. Jamie Babka, I'm our Director of Product Operations here at Lojiwa. Today, as Wayne mentioned, we're going to be talking about put walls and how these can be used to optimize picking operations. So let's take a look at our agenda. Three categories for today's quick take. First, we'll start by giving a general overview of put wall systems, what they are, etc. We'll talk about some of the different types of put wall systems and highlight some of the things to think about if you're considering implementing a put wall system. From there, we'll spend some time talking about the key benefits of implementing this type of a system. And finally, we'll wrap up with a discussion around what an implementation of a put wall system could entail and action items that you should plan for. So now let's jump over to an overview of what are put walls. So what are they? In short, put walls are dedicated storage systems aimed to support order consolidation and sorting processes after a batch picking run. These put wall systems come in varying styles and degrees of complexity, but they all serve a similar purpose. They provide a location for pickers to unload unsorted inventory, which allows for a follow-up sorting process to consolidate those orders more efficiently. Now, this model eliminates the need to sort during the picking run, which drastically reduces picking task execution times. Any effective put-to-wall system will provide many benefits if executed correctly, and we'll cover some of those benefits here shortly, but first let's talk about some common systems and terminology with put walls. So as I just mentioned, put walls can range in complexity. Most commonly though, they are simply a row of shelves with sorting totes along a straight wall, and usually containing between 100 to 500 sorting bins. So to use these, batch pickers end their picking runs near this fixed put wall system, and they begin the sorting process using those sorting bins for their various orders. This is a very straightforward and simple way to implement a put wall system and is a common first step for those looking to implement a batch picking model, moving from order-based picking or even a cluster picking strategy. However, this type of system can be a challenge if the proper amount of space cannot be allocated for it, but we'll talk about that more a little later. Some put wall systems are a little more advanced. So there's several assistive technologies and automated systems that can support this type of operation. Put-to-light solutions, for example, provide users with a visual identifier like a light when an item is scanned so that they can see where that item belongs to and they can place it in the appropriate location without scanning or having to look and visually find the label. This saves a ton of time in order consolidation processes. There's also several automated put wall systems out there which use robotics and other automation tools to scan, identify, and consolidate orders with very minimal human input. Now, these solutions are more costly to implement and generally require a more sophisticated WMS implementation to handle that process effectively. But on the plus side, many of these boast efficiency gains up to 10 times that of a manual process and can provide great return on investment when dealing with higher volumes. Another efficient model we've seen a lot of success implementing is what we call the mobile U-shape approach. We've implemented this model with several of our customers, particularly those that needed the flexibility of a mobile system and to deal with variable order volumes. Using this model, you'd use moving shelves with about 25 totes per unit, and multiple of these mobile sorting units can be brought together into a U-shape for increased consolidation capacity, which can then be adjusted based on your order volume. This type of a model allows a batch picker to efficiently pick mass amounts of items in one run sort them in one aggregated step, and then easily move the entire system nearby a packing station for packing. So this is just a few examples and some of the basics of different types of put wall systems. So let's talk about some of the things to think about if you're considering implementing a put wall model. So first is order volume. Major reason you'd consider moving to a put wall process is when the order volume becomes too great for the existing system. So just to use a math example here, consider if you're fulfilling 100 orders and you're using a cluster picking setup with carts that have like 10 totes. For those 100 orders, you're going to make 10 trips to complete your picking process, and you're going to sort as you're going through it. With a batch picking or put to wall system, you could in theory pick all 100 of those orders in just one trip, with a trade-off effort being that you'd have a post-pick sorting process. But by using an efficient put wall system, that sorting happens much more efficiently than trying to do it while you're on your picking cart. A second thing to consider is your product dimensions, your characteristics. You have to consider if you're able to do this effectively. So the primary driver in the efficiency of a put wall model is the reduced amount of picking runs by picking more per trip. If your products are too heavy, for example, to increase the per trip volume, the model might not work very well for you. Also, most of the effective put to wall setups have between, say, like 100 to 500 different totes for consolidation. If you're fulfilling products that are too large to fit into this limited kind of space, if you're in more like a B2B model, the put to wall system might not work as effectively for you. And then finally, physical layout and physical space. Final consideration is on how much space do you have to dedicate to a put wall. Put walls require space, and though the amount of space and whether that space is fixed or dynamic depends on what type of implementation you go with. So a standard fixed put wall, like we described before, these need a decent amount of space and can't be easily changed. So if you have highly variable order volume, this could mean that you have periods of inefficient space utilization and disorganization. And another example, like automated put wall solutions, these are generally intended for very high volume operations, and they typically require a lot of permanent space to install. They're very permanent and they don't adjust very easily. The U-shaped model we talked about before does give some flexibility in space and mobility. However, there is some space requirements, and you need the ability to move and ideally get somewhere near your packing station for the most positive gains, which can also be a challenge based on your layout. So those are a few things to consider, and you're talking about a put to wall implementation and whether or not it's a good fit for your operation. But let's talk about some of the benefits of this approach and why you'd want to consider doing it. And then we'll wrap up with some advice on how you would get started. So here are a couple of the key benefits to talk through. Labor efficiency is probably the most important benefit here. This efficiency comes in several stages of the workflow. So for example, during picking, because more picks can be made in one run and sorting is deferred to a later step, this process becomes much quicker and much more efficient to complete. During the sorting process, because this can be done in one aggregated bulk process instead of just one by one of, I picked and then now I sort, I picked and then I sort. The sorting process can be streamlined because you're doing it all in one straight shot. And finally, the packing process. Because this sorting process is generally done in a space nearby the packing station, or you're able to move over to it, this packing can occur the moment that a cell is filled and ready to be packed. So provided that you have a system that can detect that, it makes it a little easier as you're going through the sorts that your cells are filling up in your put wall, and then those can immediately be packed there at that moment, and you're not doing it on the run. Ease of training is another major benefit with the put to wall strategy. Because each of the stages of the process is compartmentalized and separated, training and onboarding can really be simplified. New employees can be trained more linearly, which makes it a little easier to get up to speed and develop training collateral. So for example, instead of a typical like pick, sort, pack, pick, sort, instead of kind of bouncing between these different tasks and processes, this can now just be simplified to pick, sort, pack. You can separate some of those tasks amongst your staff. So it makes that a little bit more linear and a little easier to training with that. And finally, order accuracy is another major underrated benefit of this model. Because picking and sorting processes are separated, pickers can be remained focused on each step without distraction. So during picking, they're only focused on picking. During sorting, they're only focused on sorting. This benefit is even further enhanced with the use of an assistive technology or automated system like Put to Light. It reduces a lot more of that decision making that they have to make, and can really be a boost to order accuracy. So now that we've covered some of the benefits of a put to wall system, let's wrap up with some of the ideas on how you can get started. So if you're thinking about implementing a put wall strategy, there's a couple of recommendations on things to do first. First, you need to decide on what type of physical put to wall system you are capable and interested in implementing. So this largely depends on the considerations that we covered earlier, things like order volume, product dimensions, et cetera. Also, this depends on the kind of space you want to allocate to it. Fixed shelf and automated systems, for example, require more space, more dedicated space. U-shaped put walls offer a little bit more flexibility because they can be moved. But these are all considerations you'd have to make based on your layout. I should also mention there's a good resource for this topic on our website if you're interested in learning more about mobile U-shaped put walls. And that's something we can share with you here after the presentation today if you're interested. The second thing to consider is the workflow steps of your unique operation. These need to be taken into account. So your put to wall system selection criteria may change based on unique use cases in your operation. So for example, if you have, let's say, multiple custom picking requirements, or you have a QC step that's baked into your process, some of those automated solutions may not play very nicely with that, and they would have to remain as part of a manual human effort. And generally, I like to share this piece of advice whenever it comes to selecting tools to support tasks and processes. Never implement a tool to support a task that you aren't able to whiteboard or dry out on paper. So for this example here, if you're looking at considering a put to wall solution or a put to wall tool, make sure that you're able to actually write out your workflow steps before investing any time into laying out that plan. And finally, the third item here is to make sure you have a good system in place for warehouse management or find one. Let's say you're using a partially manual or paper-based system, or if you're on an older or weaker WMS software that can't handle your workflow, it could be difficult to reap the benefits of a put-to-wall system. You might not be able to handle the different steps that are necessary. This is an area, for example, we have a lot of experience with. We've supported many of our customers looking to implement a more robust process that their current solution couldn't handle. It's kind of an evolutionary step that we see. So that's an area to look at from the WMS side of, do you have a system that is capable of handling that? Once you've identified each of these different factors, there's a couple key implementation related activities that need to be considered and baked into your plan. So first, configuring your WMS to work with the new system that you've identified. Some WMS providers are better than others when it comes to working with these type of put-to-wall models. So number one is be sure to work with your provider to understand if your current solution is capable of or compatible with your put-to-wall solution. Next, defining a solid or training and rehearsal plan that should be outlined. So for rapidly growing operations, this type of a change, especially if you're moving from just single order based picking, this can feel like a lot to take in. And so a very strong training process is recommended here. And that's not just for your current team and as a one-time event. This is for incoming new hires, seasonal employees, et cetera. You need a good training plan so that they can understand all the different pieces here. You're typically introducing a couple additional steps to make sure that people are doing this effectively. So for example, for our customers that are looking to do this, we typically provide a combination of like in-person training, recorded trainings, dry runs, dress rehearsals, that type of thing to ensure that there's no hitches with the process overall and the staff and the team is fully comfortable with implementing it. Your training needs are obviously going to vary depending on the complexity of the solution and the system you select and the seniority of your staff, the complexity of your use case. But overall, a good training plan, documentation, and collateral is very important. And then finally, create yourself a plan for monitoring and controlling post-implementation. As with any new process, it's important to understand what your benchmarks are and to set yourself some goals. But tracking those benchmarks and goals requires a good reporting solution. So make sure that you've identified your reporting needs and expectations before you get started. Otherwise, if you run into trouble or if you're seeing something, your end result isn't what you were hoping for, without a good reporting strategy already defined or a reporting tool available, it could be difficult to identify exactly where the problem is coming from. So for example, from our system, we have a task-based reporting option where you can see, the different amounts of time that certain tasks take. And so if you start to see sort of an influx in a particular phase, like during batch picking or during the sorting process, that can be pretty quickly identified, and we can hammer out exactly where the hitch in the process is. So overall, I hope you found the overview of Putwall systems and implementation and benefits helpful. So just wrap up here with a couple key takeaways. So number one, Putwalls, they're dedicated storage systems aimed to support sorting after batch picking for massive efficiency gains and high volume operations. Mobile U-shaped Putwalls can provide a lot of efficiency with minimal space requirements and without the expenses in the more complex AMR solutions. And finally, implementing a solid Putwall system does not have to be difficult if you have a solid partner, a strong WMS platform, and a good understanding of the limitations and constraints. So with that, I will turn it over to Wayne. Go ahead, Wayne.
Jamie, thank you very much, sir. As always, a ton of information packed into that small investment in time for all of us. We really appreciate your expertise, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, would love to get your feedback. We'll be looking at any chat messages that you send us using the chat function here in the webinar platform. So please, if you have any questions, any requests for more information, like to talk to one of our warehousing experts about Putwalls, whether it's right for you, or whether you're already fairly familiar and just want to share some information about your experience with Putwalls, love to hear from you. So again, please feel free to reach out here in the chat for this session. And I'll mention that anybody who would like to talk to us about how we can help you with your warehouse operations, help you optimize, especially for high volume DTC fulfillment, love to talk to you. You can reach us very easily, logiwa.com/request-a-demo. That'll put you in touch with one of our experts who will have a quick conversation with you. Anyway, with that, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for your investment in time. We appreciate it. We'll see you back here for the next quick take. Jamie, take care. Have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone.